We are in the autumn of 2019. I asked you nearly a year ago what you would do if you were boss of Countrywide. Tell me what you said then, Russell, and has that changed since?
The only thing that's changed at Countrywide in that last 12 months is their share price has dropped even further. They're now at 98% off what they were worth 2 or 3 years ago. The management team is the same, the approach is the same, the repetitive numbers in terms of drops in revenue and profits are the same. They're still losing money. The share price today is 4p, as it's been for a few weeks and months now, but of course was famously at £6 a while back. So look, who am I for them to listen to me? I mean, I said back in December, January, I think it was, that I think they needed to consolidate their brands, that the brands had some value. There are some businesses out there buying estate agency businesses, and decent brands. I would use the money that came from that consolidation to pay down their 75, which is now 100 million in debt.
So you like some of your Hamptons, your nice brands. Hamptons is
you'd have to have. I haven't had the honour and privilege of looking at their individual branches and brands on a kind of on a detailed basis, but you'd obviously have to take a view in terms of which ones are profitable, which ones work insofar as their geographic location versus other Countrywide brands and businesses and so on. So you'd obviously have to do that exercise. I think, look, what Countrywide have decided to do instead is just to bury their heads in the sand. And look, we know that they closed a whole bunch of branches a few months ago. We know that they're closing branches at a great rate of knots still, but actually haven't announced that formally to their shareholders as a public business, which I think is very, very wrong morally. So it's kind of death by 1,000 cuts, I think, in terms of...
At least LSL had the balls to actually go and say, whoosh.
Yeah, so look, Simon, Emily, Ian Crabb made a strategic decision that they could see that if the market carried on as it has, insofar as transactions, prices, the spectre of Brexit, political uncertainty and so on, that they were going to take an absolute bath. In fairness to them, they've maintained pretty much their £35 million a year profit by taking a big strategic, tough decision to close the branches that didn't work, either strategically or from a profitability point of view. I think Countrywide are attached to the ego, if you like, of being the largest estate agency business in the country. And I think Peter Long believes that being judged as the largest by way of branch number and staff number is the most important thing. Well, it isn't. It's about profit. And actually, if that business was a tenth of the size in terms of its branch footprint, which I think it should be, but still leverage those brands in areas where you closed branches, used technology, centralisation, a bit of a Keller play, actually, I have to say, but did that, but used honestly, the brands that you would retain, like Bairstow Eaves and John D. Wood, they're amazing brands that actually I think are decaying now. When I walk past Bairstow Eaves in Brentwood or Hetherington's in Shenfield, there's someone there filing their nails, somebody else on the phone, waiting for the phone to ring. And when you do an analysis like I have in my local town of where Brentwood's Countrywide offices fit in the pecking order of things, Bairstow Eaves, Brentwood, Hetherington, Shenfield are both bottom of all of the estate agency in the industry.
Roll the clock back 10, 15 years ago and they were the big
top
daddies.
Three. Yeah, absolutely right. And that's because the people at the top of the business don't understand it. That's because the staff are demotivated. There's brilliant staff that are there now and also that have left, that are demoralised. What Alison Platt did in terms of centralising everything and taking people's kind of discretion and freedom and independence away from them as branch managers was wrong. It's frustrating that Countrywide hasn't done anything to try and radically change their descendants really into kind of meaninglessness, I guess. But also that the shareholders, some of their big shareholders like Oaktree that still own 19% of the business, and there are other big shareholders, that they've just allowed this to continue. I mean, it's almost like it's some big tax write-off, isn't it? It's just phenomenal. You go and end up with I think Oaktree's position in Countrywide was worth about 300 million quid 2 or 3 years ago. It's now probably worth 15. Think about that for a second. You've lost your shareholders as a fund, as a family office, VC fund, private equity fund. You've taken 300 million chucked most of it out the window and left yourself and them with 15 minutes.
Do you think,
That's
do you
irresponsible.
think the shareholders should be standing up more and saying, having a greater
I can't
voice?
believe I haven't, really. I mean, maybe there's a very cosy relationship between the biggest shareholders and Peter Long and Paul Crefeld, but something's very odd there indeed. Or maybe they genuinely don't know what the solution is and they don't know who to turn to for the solution. And of course, look, I'm not saying that's me, but you can't just carry on regardless until you run out of fuel, because guess what? You run out of fuel, the thing's just going to hit the floor.
Thank you very much.